Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Book Club, Wednesday Book Club with the Heavy Metallurgy folks. And we're waiting for Kellen to get here. We were waiting, but we're just going to start. He'll catch up. We'll play catch up when he gets here. But joined again by Mr. Morbid Crank, Jim from Eihwaz Recordings, and of course the Brainsmasher himself, setting in for another week. It's good to see you, gentlemen. How's it been going this week?
Long
Pretty
and good.
okay.
Mother-in-law bought me a Show No Mercy shirt.
That's a keeper.
How awesome is that? I think she did a fantastic job. Like completely unbidden, didn't ask me any questions or anything. Just like chose supremely well. Very happy.
Very good. How you doing, Ben?
Pretty good. Feeling like an old busted fart, but we'll make up for it sometime.
Yeah. It only gets worse.
I got a Chinese bootleg funeral shirt.
Nice.
That's my only Doom shirt, I think.
And of course, Tim, Dwayne,
Alan's in there.
Alan's in there. Hey, everybody, what's going on? It's good to see everyone. And we're here tonight because our friend Ben picked the band Faetooth. We're going to be talking about their album Remnants of the Vessel. And to get started, Faetooth, there's not a lot of history here. Just Faetooth are a Los Angeles, California-based quartet who have released their debut EP in 2019. Leading up to the debut, full-length Remnants of the Vessel, they also shared 2 singles in 2022. So, yeah, here we are for a debut traditional Doom album. Man, that's... For me, this is kind of an eye-opening experience, but let's get into first impressions. Jim, we'll start with you. What'd you think of this one right out of the gate?
Awesome, man. I love this right out of the gate. I didn't know what to expect. Ben just gave us like a little bit of a preview. A couple non-binary members, couple female members. Besides the point, just great vocals, just fantastic vocals. Actually, I really love the vocal performance on this. The riffs are definitely that, kind of, mid 90s, early 2000s Doom sound, like, distorted orange amps going on, but, a perfect complement to those voices, and not just the voices, but the lyrics. The lyrics are really cool and really interesting. Like, I would say woven is the word that comes to mind. They really care about their lyrics in this band. And it was an interesting journey to read along and to feel the power of vocals as well from that perspective. So yeah, definitely first impressions. Good musicians. The right amount of atmospherics. Subtle keyboards just here and there. Fantastic cello work. I'm a sucker for cello. Anytime a metal band throws a cello on there, I'm gonna do a backflip and hail Satan. And this was definitely, one of those moments for me. So yeah, I can't wait to talk about this and dive into it some more. But definitely, from the get go, really loved this, and that's saying a lot for me because Doom, as we've spoken before, can be it's a metal genre that I have to be in the mood for, but there was no warming up. There was no need for me to warm up to this. It caught me in the right, vein immediately, and it stuck with me. I've listened to it probably 15 times since last week, so it's great.
Right on. Hey, they're in the chat.
Hey, what's going on, Faetooth, folks? Good to see you. And Ben, what were your first impression?
Well, so I was thumbing through TikTok, and they had a video pop up, and the guitar tone just ruled immediately, and it sounded great on my phone even. So I was just like, I got to hear more of that guitar tone. Went to their Bandcamp page, played like maybe 2 minutes of a song. I was like, ooh, this is gonna be good. And then I just stopped. I thought, let's just throw this in the album club maybe and see if it works out. And put it on, and man, that tone is just addictive. I can't get enough of that guitar tone and just the overall beautiful mix and harmonious sound of it. It's just an ultra satisfying, heavy, atmospheric kind of album to really kind of dunk your head in and dwell in. It's immersive and huge and et cetera, et cetera. It's just great for so many different reasons. First impressions, I was all in.
Right on. Kellen, hello. Good to see you made it. And first impressions, you made just in time.
Okay. First impression. So I took a look at the album cover and on their Bandcamp page and saw that they went by Fairy Doom. So I was kind of intrigued as to what was going to be in store for me. I thought Ben might be taking us on a mushroom hunting trip or something for this one. And for sure enough, like it started and I was immediately impressed because they're sort of the initial song, I guess it's actually the second track, I guess. Echolalia. By the weight at the end of that track, it gets heavier and heavier, and it was interesting to see by the end of the listen how many different sort of subgenres they were pulling from.
Yeah.
I'll get into that later when we talk about the songwriting, but I was immediately impressed, and here we are at the end of 22, and I'm kind of thinking of my favorite, albums of the year, and by the end of my first listen, I was trying to catalog my favorite Doom records of 22. And I heard this one time and I was already thinking like, where does this, going through my entire like 22 listening and seeing where it would potentially rank. So it made a pretty strong first impression.
Killer.
Yeah. Very similar for me too. I am very skeptical, I guess, when it comes to the style of music. I like it. Don't get me wrong. I like this style of music, but I'm rarely in the mood for it. Rarely in the mood. And if I am in the mood for it, I'm putting on like Reverend Bazaar, which is like the very extreme end of slow and plodding and patient and silly and all that stuff put together. It's just weird. But this album instantly, the amazing guitar and bass tone, very organic, super heavy sounding. That is a big calling card for me. And yeah, I think it was Tim that was saying it reminds him more of a stoner than a Doom. And the stoner for me is that fuzzed out orange amp thing. And I'd be curious what their gear is. If they're in the chat, they want to put up what their amps they use. I'd be curious because it doesn't sound like out of the box orange to me. It sounds a little bit more unique than that. I don't know. I could be talking out of my ass, but I really, really like the heavy tone. I like how they take staples of traditional Doom and counteract the often status quo doldrums and with their fantastic songwriting. I think it's amazing how these super simple lines and layers that they've kind of charted out, there's nothing necessarily mystical about what they're doing, but it somehow works so well. Their ear for writing good songs works really well. Initially up front, I was actually a little bit turned off by the harsh vocals. I thought, this is an unnecessary element. I would rather have more clean. But then the more I kept listening to the record, I'm like, okay, it makes sense where it sits. And I like the conflicting, clean and destructive style of vocals, and end up liking them quite a bit. And initially up front, I was like, oh, I don't know if this is a good choice, but regardless, this album was pretty much impressed me right out of the gate. Got more and more fond of it as I progressed with it through the week. Ben, did you have a sidebar?
So like they sit at this perfect crossroads of genres that I ordinarily dabble in at best, I guess. There's sludge, which I'm like, it's got to be great. Doom is great when it's slower. And like suicidal and
more deathy,
and a little bit of death doom and kind of stuff. But like this is just like a perfect mix of all three of those. And like I'm hearing like some kind of 90s grunge kind of Alice in Chainsy kind of jangly shoegazy sort of guitars in there. So it's just a perfect melding of a recipe of all those different kind of things that are ordinarily like ho-hum, but just mixing those 3 or 4 different disparate genres in a perfect way, just nailed it. And then I think there's a really awareness. There's a strong awareness of like cliche and gimmicky kind of things that ordinarily this kind of stuff has a lot of, that makes me go, eh. Like you said, the black metal vocals, ordinarily I kind of hear that sort of thing in a sludge, and it's like over distorted in some way, and like post mastering or something like that, or like this yelling through one of those megaphone kind of things or something. And ordinarily that sounds like crap, but like I feel like the songwriting was written so convincingly and the performance is so just, I guess, honest, that I was just hook, line, and sinker sold on the emotion coming through these songs. So anything they did, whether it was black metal vocals or anything, I was just there for it, all of it, all the way.
And you were going to bring up a topic? Was that the... I'm missing something. Oh, okay. I guess we could talk about the how this sits within the traditional doom umbrella, if it even needs to. But I mean, obviously, they're pulling from a lot of different aspects, from stoner to traditional to some darker tones too, with the black metal vocals. But even though they're not really reinventing any wheels, why does this work so well? What about this makes it? Because to me, this stands out. I mean, I'll be honest. I like some traditional doom. Don't get me wrong. I like the classics. I mean, even I think Kellen picked something we listened to that had some traditional doom stuff, and that doesn't touch this. I don't remember which album was that, Kellen. It was a few weeks back.
It was the Ecclesia.
Yeah. The Ecclesia. I mean, that seemed like there was some confusion going on here. It's, what are they doing, do you think, that's elevating them above the traditional doom doldrums, I should say? What do you think, Jim?
Well, I can tell you what it is, man. There is such sincerity and power in the vocals and the delivery of their lyrical content that it kind of squashes, for me, it sublimates everything else. Like everything else to me is an addition, to that. Like it is just a supporting factor. I mean, I just feel really pulled in by it. This band achieves haunting vocal performance without the need for, any, sound effects or, over the top, scary intros or, what I want to say is, like, I feel like they deliver like the magic of like a fantasy realm without delivering like the visuals or the contrived, like, accoutrement to come along with that. You know what I mean? Like they deliver it from like the soul, like, that I feel like I'm being taken into like somewhere that's like fantastical, but not by any sort of like traditional means. It's only by pure emotion, and it's just so raw. But when you read the lyrics, though, it's not like these lyrics aren't concrete. They're very like, mystical and almost riddle like in the way that they're constructed. So I had a very hard time like figuring out like what exactly they're singing about in each song. But I loved that challenge because I could get like little glimpses of it. You know what I mean? I saw allusions to Scarlet Letter here, to Greek mythology there, to like, witch burning in one place, and like the matriarchy in another. There's so much going on here, and I love that. It's so rare for like a metal album to pull me in lyric. It's usually just the sound. And but with their vocal sound and with their lyrical delivery, like, I was brought on a journey that way. And I feel like, and then, when you feel like you can't get enough of that with these like really brutal, just huge riffs, like pushing that into your mind like a truck, then you've got cello, you know, and a well played cello. You know, you've got very subtle keyboards in the background on some of the choruses. You know, you've got, you know, just like tormented, tortured, you know, harsh vocals. You know, and the reason why they probably was rough for you at first, Marty, is because it is such a contrast from like the just very I don't know, it very sweetly sung. I don't know, vocals like, you know, with this harshness, like, and it was such a contrast. But I think it's a brave choice to do that contrast, and that's what makes it metal. I mean, putting that in there, that really hard to take, you know, contrast to that very, very lilting, but also, you know, powerfully deep, you know, clean vocal, like, you know, that's what, you know, that's sort of like, you know, treatment of their sound is what you know makes people like us, you know, grab onto it, you know. And so
part of it for me was I really liked the clean vocals so much that I didn't need the harsh vocals. I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I get it, you know, and you know, and yeah, I'm you know, I'm, you know, not afraid to tell you guys, I got it written down here for Strange Ways, dude. No shit. Like, we got the chorus of that song, dude. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Like, that's how much like their voices got to me. You know what I mean? Like, just like pulling it out. And I immediately you know, I was trying to buy it, you know, but the tape sold out. The vinyl's not coming up 2020. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I was immediately on a mission to buy this. And as soon as the pre-orders come up, I will, because, you know, it's rare that something touches me in this kind of a way, especially, you know, in metal, even though metal is, of course, by far my favorite genre, you know, but this band has managed to do that. And, you know, in a way that I want to return to it, because I feel like there's still more mystery there to uncover.
Right on. Kellen, any thoughts on it?
Right. So just to talk about all the different things I heard. So the lyrical aspect to that, I just want to, because I know Jim mentioned to that, but after I listened to this the first time around, I was curious to catch some of their influences, and they mentioned something like Bikini Kill, and that style of punk and its sort of identity in politics. The song that I mentioned earlier, it opens with, they have a video out, so if people want to go watch it, go ahead. But men like ants ran past the toppling bricks and the face of wrath. Futile is the work of men. Metal, stone, and words all will bend, or will all bend. I saw that and I was like, they're taking a doom sort of, almost, to me, it sounds like an English kind of pastoral doom. Like if you were to think about something like Pagan Altar, for example. They're taking that kind of mold and infusing it with a different kind of take on witchcraft, coming from a kind of Bikini Kill punk background. There's this intersection there. They're reinterpreting a very well-established theme within doom in a new context. So lyrically, that was interesting for me. And they keep that going through the entire, you know, album. There's an identity there to their lyrical sort of concepts. The other part of it, so they do a better job. I'm not a huge like black gaze fan. It's just not a genre I'm well versed in. But part of the vocal, like haunting presentation, that sort of like enchanting vocal, reminded me of listening to like My Bloody Valentine. It's really it's that kind of subtle vocal introduction. The rhythm section's totally divorced from it. So I'd say they don't have that guitar sound, but it has that, I think the way Jim described it is lilting, that kind of vocal presentation works perfectly with this kind of like pagan doom identity. So they get that dead on. So you have those pieces along with, I think what everyone's mentioned so far, there's somewhere between, they mentioned Melvins as an influence, which I thought was an
I get that.
Yeah.
so there's like a simplicity to their like size and punishment when they're writing doom riffs, but that pagan doom side pulls it away from anything being conceived as sludge for me. It's firmly rooted in a doom sound. I get a doom experience when I listen to this. I don't get a lot of sludge. I can understand the weight that they're pulling from sludge, but sort of the occult mysticism associated with doom, that always grounds this record. So I never drift too far into having sort of a punk sludge experience with it. I mean, all of those things, they fuse, and it seems completely natural. Like it doesn't feel forced at any point in what time during this record.
Yeah.
I was so impressed because when Ben talked about it, and he was, I think he even on the Bandcamp page wrote a pretty favorable review.
Yep.
Yeah.
I believe. And I was just impressed how much they mastered the subtlety to all those characteristics.
Right. And the alchemy of it all just.
Yeah, I was very much impressed, and I blown away for sure.
Ben?
What was the question?
We're just talking about, they're not necessarily reinventing the wheel, but they're coming up with something substantial and excellent within the traditional doom realm.
It's like a perfect it's a perfect alchemy of things that I don't ordinarily hear in one place. It's a refinement of all those things. It's something that works better than you would think it ought to. And just like there's a darkness to it that's so like palatable and so familiar and convincing. It's convincingly written, performed, and recorded, that you're just like, you can't look away from it, you can't turn away. And just having such an appealing tone and a tasteful recording to it, man, I honestly feel like whoever produced, mixed, recorded, mastered this thing is like a fifth member of this band. Like they lent the sound quality and everything is just so important to representing these songs so well. Just awesome job recording this and mastering it. The colossal tone is just huge. And I thought it was interesting how the clean tones are like as big sounding as the heavy tones are.
Yeah.
Did you guys feel that too?
Oh yeah.
Like the clean tones I think are as addictive, I guess, as the more distorted stuff. Just like all of it sound wise is so satisfying in a different sort of way. I think another reason this may be hitting us all kind of out of nowhere is like I feel like we kind of listen to so much stuff on aesthetic level, and I don't look for stuff lyrically. I don't look for stuff to like draw me in emotionally or anything, but this is doing that, and I didn't expect it, and it still works. It's something that it doesn't happen very often. So when I'm convinced and it's performed super well and written super well, God, I'm floored. It's refreshing to hear this kind of thing, not relying on tons of like chunky, repetitive kind of stuff. They just they dabble in these little areas that ordinarily I would go, but they don't do anything that pulls me out of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, back to the fact that I don't listen to a ton of this style of music. I do like it again, but I just don't. And when I do hear something like this that I like pretty much instantly, I instantly start picking apart. Well, what is it? What is it I like about this? And I don't know who said it, but it seems effortless. It seems like it was very free flowing ideas. The main foundations of the songs are sometimes just 3 notes or 3 chords. That to me is the sludge influence coming in, the Melvins, whatever. But this their ear for writing really excellent, effortless vocal melodies, and coming in with the clean guitar to offer a break from the this heavy punishing groove, even though the groove is really super simple. Again, there's a lot of really simple lines. All the way they weave them together is just, that to me is the magic. It doesn't sound forced. It doesn't sound contrived. It just seems, and then the more you get accustomed to the songs, you start to really hear the emotion. you start to really feel it isn't just the simple lines anymore. There's like this flowing wave of emotion that sews everything together, and it really takes all these simple lines and takes them up to the next level. And I think that's where they're really doing something that I mean, it's not something new. It's so good. I mean, and you look at their discography. They got an EP and 2 singles. So, I mean, they kind of hit the ground running, and they're firing on all cylinders now. But let's talk about the music. We already have been, but let's recap on the musicality and composition of this album. Jim, do you want to start?
We're talking about composition.
Yeah, musicality and composition.
Yeah. Well, musicality, we've all touched on how they sort of weave everything together seamlessly. It just seems to work. And I think that, what they really took time to do was like to develop like the sound they wanted to evoke. And that's why they've been able to stitch together these different styles in such a very clean way. That isn't very obvious. A lot of times, especially with some of the more technical bands, you're like, oh, well, here's a little bit of jazz. Here's a little bit of, industrial. Here's a little bit of, here it's, you have to, the album sort of, it unveils its influences as it goes along. They don't punch you in the face. And I think that's because they took time to make sure that what they were trying to evoke, like, always took precedence, rather than being like, having their, influences bubble to the surface. Compositionally, they took the time to make sure that the overall effect was always there. It's that mysticism we keep referring to, that haunting factor of not just the vocals, but the choice of the riffs, the way that they descend, the way that they're really, fueled by sadness, which is at the core, at Doom's core. When it's real, true Doom, that's what it's at the core. It's there's a melancholy to it, and that is pervasive throughout the record. And having said that, there's an energy to it that even when in the quieter passages, there's strength behind it. These aren't. No one is taking a back seat here. There isn't any weakness. There's a strength in facing death and embracing it. When I listen to Remains, which is, not quite a ballad, but sort of like one of the more mellower tracks on the record, I felt, and I wrote this down, it puts my mind coming across a deceased loved one. Like at the moment, like it was just like you weren't expecting. You walk into a room and they're dead on the bed, you know what I mean? But not in like a grotesque kind of a way, like a murder mystery, but maybe someone that was older that, you knew was going to pass soon, but you didn't know when, but that feeling of just like despair, but you knew it was coming. So you're distraught, but you're not out of control. Like that song Remains makes me feel that way. And I feel like, the screaming at the end of that song, the harsh, like it wouldn't be the same without it, because, it takes that really quiet vocal and it becomes a lamentation, a real just wailing of the soul. And you have got to be a great musician to be able to create that vibe and to keep it consistent throughout. And a great musician doesn't mean that you're awesome at music theory or you can play 1,000 notes a second. A great musician means that you can take what's inside of you and touch someone else and make them feel it too. And that's what this does.
Right on. Kellen.
Just one thing I was thinking about when we've been had the opportunity to review a Doom album for this album club, we were talking about Scott Riegers and St. Vitus. And I think one of the things you mentioned, the point you made, was if you did not have sort of vocal dynamics or charisma behind a vocal presentation, a Doom album can end up becoming sort of monotonous, and it just becomes like a sort of same blur of the same riff over and over. Yeah. So I think there's all 3 members sing, I believe.
Yep.
And that gives them an incredible amount of sort of vocal personality. Like they simultaneously, they can take like a clean vocal and then you'll have someone humming underneath it. There's a certain amount of like dexterity that they have as a vocal group.
Yeah.
And so you have that contributing to a doom dynamic when they kind of bring in those sort of cleaner guitar tones that like almost post black metal or post rock, even for me, it contributes to adding a greater degree of, dynamic to their sound.
Yeah.
So for a doom record, you get these incredible swings in emotional tenor. Instead of it sort of being a one note sort of album of just, gloom and sadness and despair.
Like a war metal album where
Right.
the front sounds exactly like the back. It's different from that. Yeah.
Not that I don't love Archgoat.
So for that reason, like it kept me more captivated than I would traditionally get with like a very single powerful doom singer.
Yeah.
There's a greater flexibility they have as songwriters, having multiple vocalists who have different sort of ways to instrumentally approach vocals. So they're sort of progressively building harmonies, and it adds, like, we'll get to some of our favorite songs, but there are moments in this when the strings come in addition, and just the amount of emotion is pouring out of this song. We'll get there, but yeah, I think it was more sort of emotional sort of range than I had traditionally listening to a doom record. And they captured all of that as songwriters. And I'm just talking about the vocals. So I'll let you guys talk about the guitars and so on and so forth, but purely just based on a vocal personality within a band. It was incredible to witness how talented they are sort of building with one another.
How about you, Ben?
Oh, where to start? I guess to play off of Kellen's very apt and astute summary, like, I really think having the dexterity of the vocal approach is what sets it apart, because the guitars are simplistic and enjoyable and the tone is amazing. Sure. I have got a ton of records with amazing tone on them, but that just kind of lays a perfect stage for you to make a listener be drawn in by the emotional performance and the lyrics. It's not very often that I reach for lyrics or look what they're saying, but I found myself like, why am I so moved by these words that I don't know? I got to know what the words are so I can listen along and kind of sing along. And like, these songs were stuck in my head for days, and I wanted to know what words they were. And so, like, once you start thinking about that and churning it over and over and over again in your head, it starts to really have an impact on you, like, after listening. I think the drumming is super sleek, just adequate, and there's lots of just great phrases and little accents that just lead to the buildings of emotions, and these crescendos as they build towards these. Like, there's a great, like, moments of silence and release of those parts where I'm kind of lost in the field here.
Right.
But God, there's so much awareness of how to bring those subtleties in a heavy kind of music.
Okay. For me, and that's great doing the show with these folks, because I mean, you guys all do your homework really well. I don't. I just typically sit and listen and let it impact how I feel, and I have not dug into the lyrics at all. I will do that when I get the record, but I completely connected with it on an emotional level. And yeah, I looked at back and analyzed what was going on musically just to see why it works so well for me. And it's a good 50-50. They really lay down a very solid foundation. The clean guitar dynamics are a nice touch to break away from that sludgy, groovy crawl. And the way the vocal melodies are layered in between the contrast between very pretty to very ugly, back and forth. Again, I initially thought the the harsh vocals were unnecessary because of the strength of the clean vocals. But man, the more I spun it, it all just kind of congealed into a very warm, accepting, very atmospheric and mournful sounding record. And I just really connected to that on a level I didn't really expect on an album like this for an album club. I mean, it typically doesn't happen. So,
Yeah.
I mean, kudos to the band for one thing, for writing something like this, and for Ben, you know, granted the wheel of destiny chose them, but it was still cool to listen to something I never in a million years would have checked out. And yeah, just the strength of the writing is it's a very good high caliber. And I think, yeah, Tim, multiple vocalists sound like the BOC of doom metal. You know, I thought the same thing. You're talking about multiple vocalists. You got BOC, you got Kiss. I mean, there's other bands that do that, but I always as well like that multiple pulling from different vocal styles and feels, and somehow it all works seamlessly here. If you were to told me there were 3 vocalists, I mean, I didn't know until I started looking tonight, getting preparing for this, that there were 3 singers. I was like, wow, you know, they all complement each other very well, to the point where they almost sound like the same person. But great stuff. Let's talk about the production. Again, we've already kind of gone over this. We'll start with Kellen this time.
Yeah, for the debut full length on a record, this sounds great.
Yeah.
I know it can sound incredibly cliche for a record to sound like organic, but the reason I would choose that description is because they're going like, when you look at the album cover, they got the cut open fruit, like in the sense that it sounds like something that's living, breathing, decaying, molding, like all the ways that like something that is alive could sort of over time, you know, crumble and die. There's a certain kind of life to this record. The sound is just dead on. So I really have no complaints. And at every single turn, when this could have potentially, with all their sort of subgenre sort of dabbling, it kind of, you know, turned in a certain direction and derailed sort of the heart of this record in terms of the sound. But it never does. It never goes too far into something black metal. It never goes too far into something that is, you know, post anything. I just am amazed that they were able to sort of capture the identity of a band so well early in a career. So I'm super impressed. Love the production with all the different elements, all the different vocalists I was talking about. None of them feel like they're concealing one another. They're all sort of contributing. So once you get attached to a sort of single part of a song, it never is lost. It just sort of grows collectively. And I think that's, you know, difficult to sometimes master. You know, so a certain element can potentially dominate a sound, and that never happened on this record, despite also their sort of variations or interplay between one another. Great production. Got nothing else, you know, beyond that to say.
All right. Jim.
Yeah, you know, typically it's always easy. You know, I think for me, maybe I'm a curmudgeon to pick, you know, maybe production missteps, and I think that's probably because I never recorded an album that I was ever happy with. You know, all I've ever heard is mistakes, so it's easy for me to hear mistakes, you know, doing my own stuff. But honestly, like, you know, when I think about the balance of the guitars and the drums, and, you know, distorted bass, the clean guitars, as Ben mentioned, that they're up, they're not buried in the mix, and I like that. I don't need my clean guitars to be pushed way down. They're loud enough. The drums have plenty of power behind them, but not too much where it overrides everything. You know, I couldn't pick apart the production. I felt it was just perfectly balanced, this great EQ'd. But I think that part of the reason why was because every time I spun the album, I would get so sucked into wanting to really understand and experience the songs, you know, musically and lyrically, that I would forget to even pay attention to the production as a whole. Like that's how powerful the music is for me on this album. Like I just like my mind didn't have time to try to pick it apart. I just wanted to. I didn't want to analyze it. I wanted to feel it, you know, and I was able to do that. But you know, having said that, I can take a step back and tell you that obviously this was done with a lot of love and care. And I think they said that the producers in the chat, hey Joseph, you did a great job. Yeah, you know, obviously, you know, this person took the time to listen to what this band was doing, and to understand it and to feel it and to translate that the sort of mysticism that they carry deep within their sound and make sure that was evoked properly, you know. And that takes someone, you know, that's equally, I think, you know, behind the board, equally as talented as the band themselves, to be able to do it so, you know, honestly, you know, perfectly. You know, I can't pick it apart. I'm probably going to listen to it again tonight before I go to bed. So, you know, this is just really good stuff. I made my wife listen to it earlier while she was cooking dinner, and I was like, "You have to check this out." Yeah. So, but anyway, yeah. Very, very well done, and you know, I'm intrigued. Like, where are they going to go from here? You know, this is really good stuff. So, you know, and they're at the beginning of their journey. So, and with the producer too. And I'm sure if they continue to journey together, they're going to achieve even higher heights.
Right on. Ben, production.
Man, there's such a awareness for what this band's magic can conjure, and figuring out how to represent that audioly is great. From what I can tell, Joseph, I don't think you've like produced a lot of albums. I can't really find any credits for what you've done, but I read a little bit of an interview where it sounded like Joseph just came into the studio and actually came to where they rehearsed and recorded them there. I don't think it was actually like a proper studio, if I'm right. So like to be able to pull that off is amazing. But then taking that recording home, I think, and like making the volumes just perfect and adding the little subtleties that don't tip anything over the edge in such a delicate and nuanced soundscape is really, really tasteful and talented. So kudos. Great production.
Where the guitar tone really succeeds in, I think, if they're pulling from sludge for that guitar tone, I mean, it typically a shitty, thick, fuzzed out guitar sound is kind of the law of the land. Here, it was kind of captured. There's a definite mean tone, very snarled guitar tone, but it's given weight and fullness, which it really, and even the clean tone as well, very full, clean tone as well. It just, they don't shy away from being heavy and extreme sounding, but the way it's recorded and captured, it gives it a very living, breathing sound, other than just this is shitty. It's cool because it's shitty, you know. I mean, that's a thing. Like you hear some of these fuzzed out stoner bands, the guitar tone is almost indecipherable. The riffs are indecipherable because of that thick, shitty. The tone itself sounds stoned, you know, stoned and about to be sick is what the guitar tone sounds like. But here, I mean, like I said, there's a weight to it, and it really helps deliver these songs, even in the quietest moment, or even in the moment where, you know, the foundation of the song might only be doing 3 notes, 3 chords. It's great. I love how the vocals are produced. It's just lilting, very pretty, the way the vocals are captured, and it allows the listener to not be bothered by what's wrong with it, and just not even think about it. Just become part of the song, part of the atmosphere, and not be like, oh my God, that guitar tone sucks, or wow, those vocals are too low in the mix, or wow, that snare sounds like dog shit. I mean, none of that. It all the way it's captured, it leads you into the experience of this album, which is the sign of a good job. So Joseph, 4 thumbs up on a Heavy Metallurgy's got talent. Least favorite songs. Ben, we'll start with you.
Well, best favorite song I think was pretty easy. Saturn Devouring His Sun at the end. Just what a perfect ending to the album. that ruled. I was almost gonna say track 3 was my favorite because it was, I don't know, just the subtlety to it just really drew me in. But there's these like really extreme moments in it that sound really harsh and angry, and I really connected with that. But maybe it was just a particular day that I was like really focusing on that song. Of note, I think this band sounds quite a bit like a band called Regana from Oakland, which I love. Awesome, like black metal band that's kind of this ilk. So if you want to kind of more explore this kind of sound, check out Regana. Well, where was I going with that? Favorite track? Yeah, Saturn Devouring His Sun is excellent. Least favorite, gosh, the intro, I guess. I don't know. I love it all. It's I don't want to take any. I wouldn't take a second off the record.
Right on, Kellen.
Well, I'll just say that probably the moments that are less powerful are the sort of instrumental moments on the album, but they play an important role. So I wouldn't call them bad. So I didn't really have a major downfall for this record in terms of tracks. So favorites include, I mean, I will agree, but I'm going to get there in the end. So I loved the song that I mentioned earlier, Echolalia, purely because it also felt like a lyrical thesis for the band. Like, in terms of an identity, that track nailed it. But it gets sort of progressively heavier and got me intrigued. She cast a shadow. So the opening line, "A spiteful moon obscures her face," which begins the song, and also one of the closing lines, "A mother in heaven whose lap and skin we trace." Both of those are phrased in a way that reminds me directly of Christian Linderson, who's one of my favorite doom vocalists. Just the way that they're speaking before they get into a scream. It's one of the heavier songs here. I know that we talked earlier about, I think Jim mentioned Strange Ways, but I liked the Remains into Discarnate transition. Remains is like one of the more melodic songs that are sung, and then it moves into Discarnate, which is one of the heavier tracks on the entire album. That transition, that 1-2, was great. And the closing track, we've talked about how you can really, capitalize on the last sort of moment on an album, the last track that you hear. That outro, when the strings come in,
it's the payoff. It's the payoff for the album. It's the emotional payoff. Yep.
We get this moment with 9 minutes. And there's very little lyrical content on that track. All of it is just sort of this gathering weight. And in the moment when they can drive home the record and deliver, they give it to you. I mean, they understand how to finish a record. So I know that's I basically mentioned the entire album, but but all of those were favorite tracks. And when I was today, I knew this question would be coming up. And so I was like, man, I gotta start picking my favorite tracks. I listened to it over and over and over. It's like, well, I'm just gonna basically list the entire album, and we'll be done.
All right, Jim.
I will buckle up because it's the same. Yeah, man. Whatever. There's not a bad moment on this album. Everything is constructed with care, and it shows. Echolalia, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Obviously, yes, a perfect, emblem of what they are and what the album becomes as it progresses. I just, on thy knees now. I mean, I can't get enough of that. I'm already singing along with it and shit. I love it. It's powerful. It's catchy. Obviously I mentioned Strange Ways. Something about the vocals on there. There's the way we talked about how the three vocals interplay. And there's kind of like a going on below the main vocal in that song, and just hearing all that together. That's what it made the hair stand up on my arm. It really got to me that deeply.
Faetooth, if you need a fourth singer, Jim is available, by the way. He's ready. If you could hear that, I mean, I got a little misty on that. I'm just saying. Continue, Jim. I'm sorry. I got to compose myself.
If you want a beer belly folklore guy, I can help with that. but you know, we have to definitely say Saturn devouring his son. You know, I mean, 9 minutes, it feels like 2. Like I love every second of that. I don't want it to end, you know, and when the cello comes in, it's just like I feel like I'm rising from the dead, man, every time. And I literally am always like sad when it starts to fade out and it goes away. I'm like, oh, you know, it just doesn't, even as long as quote unquote the song is like it doesn't feel like it's long enough. Like I want more, and that is always a sign of a record that's going to stick with me when I don't want it to end, and I don't want this to end. So it's really cool. And you know, I got to say this before we move on. It's come up. Ben mentioned this. I've seen it in the chat. You know, like, you know, there's some Alice in Chains kind of vibe there. You know, that definitely not a dig for me. Like I love Alice in Chains. You know, but what's I don't listen to them often, and the reason why is because when those albums were out in the '90s, like, going through some tough times, and so when I even though I love them, I can't listen to them anymore. Like, you know, because the lyrics were very concrete. You knew what they were talking about, and so you couldn't disassociate from that relationship. You know, they're powerful, but there was no mystery there. And so it brings me back too harsh to those times. What I love about this is there's the same sort of emotional, you know, transience going on here, but with the mysticism, mysticism of their lyrics, and without the concreteness of it, I know I can return to it in a way and not be like dragged down into my own memory. You know what I mean? I can just experience that emotion free of any like a personal experience. And that is what they've achieved on this record. That's extremely difficult to do, but that's what the best metal is about. Is like it isn't concrete. It's otherworldly, but you still connect to it, and that's the essence of metal. And that's what this is.
That's a good point too. The whole emotion without nostalgia. I mean, like you talked about, you know, Alice in Chains bringing back parts of your, you know, things you've gone through, and you relate to that record that way. You know, on this album, the band is showing you their emotions, and even though you might not feel them the same way they do, they invite you to become a part of it, like an observer, and you still feel the anguish, you still feel the whatever they were going through, and it's refreshing to not have your own baggage attached to it, for me anyway, which is part of the whole thing as well. But as far as bad, there is none. It's all, like I was talking with Dune Alter here, it's all part of the journey, and every song has its place. They sequence the album really well. I mean, started right off with Echolalia, very well written vocal melodies and equally solid chorus. Love that endlessly heavy groove. She Cast a Shadow. Clean guitar lines add ornate dynamics before they dig in with a 3-chord doom crawl and harsh vocals. More distortionless moments creep in to break up the song structure. It's just the right time. They don't leave you out on hanging out to dry on just a heavy plodding progression. They break it up. They give you a rest. It all comes down. I mean, I liked all the songs leading up to it, but Saturn Devouring His Son, the cello, I love the slow build. It's like a slow, patient build. Sparse notes, melody lines. They lay out a mournful sonic tapestry for those strings to hit, and it strengthens the progression so much. A very hypnotic flow, very sad flow, super emotive vocal lines. It's a great closing song. It's like, you know, we took everything to get this far, and adding the orchestration into the song is just kind of like a new element. It's kind of like, hey, what's going to be on the next album? This is kind of like even though it's not a big bombastic climax to an album, it still leaves you on a very emotional high or low, however you want to say that. But you know what I mean? It's very emotional and very raw nerve feeling and sad. And they nailed it. They did a really good job with it. But Judgment, final thoughts, Jim.
Back to me already. I'm still regathering my wits from my last.
I'm still a little torn up by that vocal performance.
Yeah, do you need a minute?
Gonna need a minute. No, yeah, well, obviously, I love this record. I recommend anyone that loves Doom to check this out. You will not be let down by it. There's so much going on here. There's so many layers to it. Like I said, I've listened to it probably 15 times in the last week, and I still hear something new every single time. So it's kind of a cliche at this point to say that. But sometimes albums have that much depth and that much going on where that's just the facts. You know what I mean? Attaching adjectives to it, put all that aside, it just happens to be the case that is this kind of a record. There's just a lot of layers going on there. And I think it's probably because of the motivation to create this world that, of music they did, there's a lot of layers inside of them. And they were able to put that out. So, absolutely love this record. It's a 10 for me. I'm super sad that I can't order it right now. But I absolutely will when it comes out. And to your point, Kellen, yes, this is one of my favorite Doom albums of the year. Absolutely. I mean, top 2, I would say.
All right, Ben.
Give it a little strong 3, maybe. So, after gushing about it for 56 minutes. Yeah, it transcends being rated, really. I mean, I wholeheartedly love this thing. It was hard to make myself listen to anything else this week, since we chose this thing. Did any of you guys listen to their other material, or was it just this album?
I didn't have time, just this album. Yeah,
I couldn't tear myself away from this one. I saw all those. I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. Let me play this again.
Yeah. I do that. Like if I fall in love with a band or an album on a single release, I'm like, I'm afraid to go outside of this because it might not be as great. There's no way it could be better than this one. Overall, man, yeah, I love this thing. Can't wait to order it. Dune Ultra, let us know when we're shaking our money at you. Let's get this thing going.
right.
And are you planning on maybe doing repress of the tapes too, to sate our appetite for owning this thing? Curious to know. But yeah, in closing, love it. Can't wait to hear what they do next. I'd love to see them live. They've got my support all the way.
All right.
It's weird to start out this good with the debut. It's
Yeah,
pretty,
it almost bodes poorly.
I know, right?
I mean, yeah, it's tough. Anyway, Kellen.
Yeah, like I mentioned to start, I listened to this and immediately knew it was going to be one of my favorite records, especially Doom records this year. And as we're in closing thoughts beyond that, I'm trying to think of new Doom bands, that I would rank this high, like in terms of someone who's emerged on the scene that has grabbed me in the way that this band has, and really sort of pulled my intrigue. And beyond that, going through these album clubs now, sometimes, a record you may not get it to begin with, and you will sort of learn to appreciate it later on. Maybe you don't get it for years and eventually clicks, and then you absolutely love it. That's common in terms of what I experience. It's actually probably it's a bit more rare that something I listen to the first time and it completely grabs me like this record did. I think sometimes we forget that, especially, metal listening can also be a bit of a challenge at times. It takes a bit more attention. And this record never was a challenge in terms of, getting me to pay attention to it. It held me captivated from the beginning to the end, through listening to it time after time after time. It never felt like it was a challenge or a chore, or I was having to do homework for album club, right? Like this, every single time I thought, I'm completely in agreement. Like, hopefully there'll be, I'll be up at 2 a.m. waiting for the when it goes live and the pre-orders are up for sale and I can, hit my alarm kind of thing, because I don't want to miss out on this. And if you are listening to this, if you aren't here tonight and you catch this stream, later, watch, like, I'm telling you, put it on your list. Like, if you miss this, I can say for sure this may be the one record that I've been a part of here for the album club in 2022 that I can say definitively, if you do not listen to this record, you are missing out on one of the best releases in 2022.
All right.
Oh.
I mean, for, like I said, a traditional Doom record to come along and the first time hearing it being okay, wow, and not, like, again, it didn't feel like homework, especially coming off a 6-hour fucking Blue Oyster Cult stream. Let me tell you, you want to know what homework is, people? Listen to music.
Man.
Oh, it's fun. It's so much fun listening to music.
You deserve so many gold stars for
it
that.
It is not fun when you have to listen to so many albums you've never heard before and then actually have to process them leading up to a 6-hour fucking stream. But Faetooth, it's a great record. It's, again, maybe almost too good. Maybe puts a little pressure. Hopefully the band just goes into writing and not thinking about it. Just do what they do. I'm sure this music came to them very organically, and just do what they do, because they obviously they're approaching songwriting from the right place. It's not forced. It isn't fake. It just sounds and feels excellent. They've got a good team in place. They've got good songwriters. They got good vocalists. Just let them do what they're going to do. And as it stands, I mean, I forgot to put the Bandcamp link in the description. I'll do that as soon as this is published. But it's a great record. Everyone in the band and the producer in the chat, congratulations. I'm glad you all tuned in on a show that we actually like your stuff, because we actually slam bands too. So it was
I was gonna say, it's actually kind of disarming. Like, we sit around here and like pick apart and criticize albums, but it's not often stuff that comes across where we're just like, whoa,
all in the same boat. I mean, there's always one of us that's like, okay.
The last time that happened was Blood Vaults.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I
right.
mean, that's the kind of record we're
Ruins
talking
of
about,
Errors.
right? Like, if you have to get that kind of unanimous praise,
Yeah.
then
That record is also kind of, well, that band is also kind of a sonic brethren to this band too. I think this really echoes of Ruins of Everest a lot, just coincidentally. I think it has a lot of that like churning emotional depth to it that just pulls you in really hard.
Yeah, the mystery is there in a different way, but it's there. Yeah.
Well, cool. We made it through. And thanks again, guys and Ben, for picking this record. Oh, I was scared. And for the band and everybody in the chat, it's very cool. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight. And before we go, Jim has the duty of picking next week's album club. Mute's
Santa?
on, bro.
Santa Claus, is that you?
Lord of Fearum, preserved in torment. So
Oop, hold
a
on.
little bit of different direction from today, but maybe sonically adjacent in some ways. But yeah, interested to get you guys' take on this. I've seen these guys live. Good stuff. I want to know what everybody thinks about it. So
Awesome. What's the name of the album again? I've got it. I just haven't. I didn't.
preserved in torment.
Putting it in the
Awesome
chat.
record.
By Mortiferum.
Can't you read the logo?
I'm sure I spelled that wrong, people, but you get the idea. And a bit of house cleaning before we move on. We've got an email address. It is heavymetallurgychannel@gmail.com. If anybody needs to get a hold of us, you can do so that way. I begrudgingly put up an Instagram page. I think it's the same thing. Heavy Metallurgy Channel. Instagram, I don't know. There's some people.
Like,
there's
they're
some
really
people.
excited about it.
I'm not a fan. Ben runs the Bindrune one mostly, and I've got one I never do much with, and I don't know, I'm trying. There's just too much shit to do. And next and Friday, Lazarus, Dwayne, he has his own YouTube channel. Lazarus is going to be our guest. We don't know exactly what the topic's going to be yet, but it's going to be a fun time. Anybody have anything else? Oh, links to everybody here's channels in the description. Kellen just put out a really killer topic. Can metalheads be audiophiles? it's kind of blowing up. People are shooting videos, and yeah, way to hype, Marty. Oh, the Instagram page. I'm just. You're not doing it, Alan. You don't even have Facebook or Instagram. Damn it. Hey, it'll be a fun time over at the Instagram page. We're gonna have there's going to be little ornamental sandwiches. There's going to be party favors. There's going to be fun for everyone. Yeah. But anyway, Kellen just put an awesome video that's taken off a little bit. Awesome topic. Hope to shoot a video for it by the end of the week. We shall see. But yeah, that's it. Does anybody have anything to add before we cut it?
Yeah, for any newcomers, if this is your first time tuning in, we all do this kind of thing on our own channels and different flavors, except for Jim. This is his exclusive appearance. Yeah, link down below.
Kellen's channel is Killing for Company. The link is in the description. And if you're new to the channel tonight, subscribe. We do this every week, twice a week, typically. Book album club is Wednesdays, Friday nights, the bigger topic, but it's good to have everybody to stop by and, yeah, hang out with us. So anyway, until next week, we'll be covering Mortiferum, and we will see you all then and Friday night. Cheers. Y'all have a good one.